Lama 350.
I have a love and hate relationships with grants.
Yeah.
One, because necessarily they tend to be very small, hence
Yeah,
the 350.
50,000.
What can you do with 350 as a
Yeah.
person? What can you really do with 50,000 as a business? So grants are
Sure.
there.
Yo, 350 for individuals, 50,000 for a business.
Yeah.
Yes, yes.
Yeah.
I see what you did there.
So grants for early stage make sense because you can commit to returning the capital anyway because you're still starting out. You still need to prove the concept of the business.
Sure.
So grants make sense for businesses that are really just at conceptualization or startup stage. If you have a business that needs to grow, and then you say to me you need a grant, I then ask the question that I'm not popular for that says, do you then have a viable business case? Because a viable business case says, if I put money into this business, they will be able to pay it back and still grow with what they make. If not, then you have a problem.
Even if it's a grant.
The other thing I don't like about grants is, remember, you don't have to pay the grant back, but
Yes.
you also don't want to fall into the trap of being grant dependent. In other words, this business only works if I get free money, because then again, is that business viable?
So let's get into loans, equity funding,
So
stage growth phase.
yeah, so equity funding really says you either provide your own money or you get somebody else to co-own and co-fund this business with you.
That's selling shares, basically.
Yes. Unlike debt, which tends to be short-term in nature, 3 years, 5 years, 7 years, or whatever the case is, equity doesn't have a repayment period. So you can invest here for 10, 20, 30 years or whatever the case is. It's a long-term play. So that's the one risk. Secondly, if this business had to be wound up or had to be closed down, equity owners get paid right at the end. So you'll pay your employees, you'll pay your SARS, you'll pay your debtor, your debt providers or your lenders. And then whatever remains, that's what the equity holder gets, if there's anything that still remains. So that's the risk in providing equity. But the other side of it, unless you put your own equity in the business, nobody's going to give you debt. Because remember what I said earlier.
Skin in the game.
Skin in the game. If I'm putting in all the money, if somebody comes and offers you a lucrative job, you're going to close this business and take that job because you got nothing to lose. So skin in the game is important.
50,000 grant, 100,000 salary.
You see now. But again, it also then speaks to one of the things you want to zoom in on very early on as a potential funder.
Yeah.
Is the person in this for the long term? Do they believe in this business? Is this what they really want to do with their life? Or are they doing it because they think they can make money out of it? Because what happens if the money doesn't come as quickly or as lucratively as they thought? If they quit, my money is already in. What happens to my money? So that's risk from a lender's perspective. Debt is the easiest and most common form of funding because it's quick to close. The relationship is very simple. I give you money today. You repay me at very specific dates, either monthly, every 3 months, or whatever the case is, or you pay me at the end of 5 years, or whatever the case can be. And then there are conditions to that debt. One of those conditions that entrepreneurs love to break is, once I've given you debt, before you can go get debt elsewhere, you need to come to me and get my consent. And people say, but it's my business. Why am I getting your permission? Because you are primarily running your business through my funding. If you then go and increase that funding, you now owe me and somebody else.
Which increases the risk of me getting my money
You
back.
might not be able to pay me now because you got to split your money between me and this person. So before I can say it makes sense for you to get additional debt, let me see what you are projecting to make and whether I'm comfortable that I'll still get paid. There's a whole other host of conditions that are attached to debt, and I find entrepreneurs don't always familiarize themselves with those conditions until they break them. at which point we are now not partnering, we are now fighting.
Yes.
And that's a problem in any partnership.
Uh-huh. So, guys, remember that this conversation is brought to you by adprop.co.za. Head out to adprop.co.za. If you got a property to list for rental or for sale, a property portfolio to manage, you'll be able to invoice your tenants, manage your portfolio, get updated on their leases, and be able to have banking records, because the system will help you develop financial statements as you use it. And if you're a service provider, please register on AdProp so that you can have access to a great range of property investors and owners that are looking for your services. So there's a lot of buzz around scaling. Is a business only deemed successful if it scales? It can't be a normal successful business.
Yeah. It depends on the kind of business you run, right? Some businesses need scale to be able to be profitable, for example. So then scale is a necessity as a matter of survival. You'll find that a lot of businesses make losses initially as they build up. You might have heard the story of Time Bank, in that in the first few years, in fact, it might still be the case now, they are still not profitable yet. The subscriber base or the customer base needs to grow to a certain point before it becomes profitable. So if you never reach that scale, then your business is never going to be viable, which is quite different if you're running, for example, a retail service station. You order the fuel, you sell the fuel, you sell the food inside sort of the
Convenience.
the convenience or forecourt. That's your business, right? It's not a business of scale, it's a business of efficiency, right? So, and everybody, I suppose, as a people, we are obsessed with size. The bigger, the better. It doesn't always work. So you need to look at the kind of business you have and say, where is it most profitable? Because there is such a thing that your business is most profitable when selling 50,000 units of whatever you sell.
If you sell more, then
if you now take it to 100, your costs go higher, or your costs now start to grow at a higher rate than the profit you are making, at which point it doesn't make sense. So
how then does an entrepreneur actually know they're ready to scale?
So
and what are the risks of growing too quickly?
One of the biggest risks of growing too quickly is burning through cash. So you can find a business that is profitable, but that doesn't have cash. Profitable businesses have failed, and everybody said, but these guys are showing 5, 10, 50 million of profit. How did they go belly up? You're showing the money, it's theoretical money, or it's accrual of profits. It's not cash profits. And if you don't